Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Samantha Woll? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Samantha Woll was born on June 15, 1983, and was raised in Detroit, Michigan. In 2001, she graduated from high school and attended the University of Michigan. Samantha became a Jewish community leader and became the president of a synagogue in 2022. By 2023, she lived in an apartment on the 1360 block of Joliet Place in the Lafayette Park neighborhood of Detroit. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On October 21, 2023, at 6:38 a.m., 40-year-old Samantha Woll was found dead outside her apartment by a neighbor. He immediately returned to his home and called 911. Here is what the police found during the course of their investigation. Samantha had been stabbed 8 times, mostly in her head and neck. Her body was cold to the touch by the time the police arrived. There was a trail of blood from her body to her apartment. Inside her apartment, there was blood on the living room floor and walls. It appeared as though Samantha had been stabbed in her residence, stumbled outside, and collapsed. On October 20, prior to the murder, Samantha had attended a wedding in Sterling Heights. People who attended this wedding said that nothing suspicious occurred there, like there was no conflict or anything else that could explain the violence later. On October 21, at 12:30 a.m., Samantha returned home from the wedding. She did not close the front door to her apartment after entering. Samantha sent a text message to a friend at 1:02 a.m. It was a heart emoji. Her phone was last unlocked at 1:27 a.m., and it was used until 1:41 a.m. She never accessed her phone after this. The murder must have occurred sometime after 1:41 a.m. Samantha's house was equipped with an alarm system. There was a sensor at the front door, the back door, and the basement door. A motion sensor was located in the living room. The alarm system collected data during the time of the attack, even though it was not armed. The living room motion sensor detected activity at 4:20 a.m. When it scanned the room again 2 minutes later, there was no activity. Investigators came to believe that the perpetrator entered Samantha's apartment and murdered her at around 4:20 a.m. and left very quickly. She had been asleep on her couch at the time the intruder entered. On November 7, 2023, 2.5 weeks after the murder, a former boyfriend of Samantha's named Jeffrey Herbstman called 911 and said, quote, "I'm having a panic attack. I'm convinced that I may have murdered my girlfriend and I don't remember it," unquote. Jeffrey did not know why he felt that way, but he mentioned that he was under the influence of marijuana and his prescription for an antidepressant medication had recently been increased. He was taken into custody but released on November 11 after the police determined he was not involved in Samantha's murder. Surveillance video from Samantha's neighborhood showed that a man had been tampering with motor vehicles around the time of the murder. By examining location data from cell phones, they found one device that matched the movement pattern. It was owned by a 28-year-old man named Michael Jackson Bolanos. On November 30, 2023, Michael was arrested in connection with Samantha's death. Eventually, he was charged with first-degree premeditated murder, felony murder, home invasion, and lying to a peace officer. The police found a small amount of Samantha's blood on a jacket that Michael was wearing during the time of the murder and a gray backpack that he had. The case went to trial. On the stand, Michael admitted that he had been stealing property from vehicles on the night of the murder. He was in Samantha's neighborhood. He claimed that while committing crimes, he saw a dark figure on the ground, which he realized was a body. This was Samantha. He touched Samantha, which is how her blood transferred to him. No effort to call the police was made because he did not want to incriminate himself. Michael's story may have explained the blood, but he was unable to justify his decision to wear an orange suit on the stand. Maybe he was preparing to be sent to a prison for those guilty of crimes of fashion. In July 2024, the jury found Michael not guilty on the first-degree premeditated murder charge. The jury could not reach a unanimous verdict on the felony murder and home invasion charges. A mistrial was declared for those two charges. Michael was found guilty of lying to a peace officer. He was sentenced to 1.5 months to 15 years in prison. Considering his affinity for wearing orange, he should not be too upset. Michael could be released as early as June 2025. The felony murder and home invasion charges against Michael were dismissed. The court ruled that the not guilty verdict for the first-degree premeditated murder charge meant retrying Michael for felony murder and home invasion would have represented double jeopardy. Now moving to my analysis. Michael maintains his innocence, and he has several supporters. They argue that Michael is a thief, but not a killer. In their opinion, a better suspect would have been Samantha's former boyfriend, Jeffrey. He implicated himself in the murder, yet was given immunity from prosecution. The state, of course, disagrees. They believe the evidence against Michael was overwhelming. This brings me to the question, was Michael guilty of murder? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that Michael was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. On the night of the murder, Michael was out committing crimes. He admitted that he was breaking into motor vehicles. He was carrying a knife at that time. Cell phone data were used to reconstruct Michael's movements that night. At 12:42 a.m., Michael left his girlfriend's apartment in Midtown to look for vehicles to steal from. At 1:44 a.m., he was a block away from Samantha's residence. By 1:57 a.m., he was even closer to her apartment. At 2:16 a.m., he entered a nearby structure looking for items to steal. Michael entered a parked car at 3:05 a.m. and removed a white bag. At 3:49 a.m., Michael was back in the area of Samantha's apartment. At 4 a.m., he was captured on video very close to her apartment, stabbing the tires of an SUV. The motion sensor in Samantha's living room picked up activity at 4:20 a.m. At 4:23 a.m., Michael was captured on video surveillance a quarter mile away from Samantha's apartment. Michael returned to his girlfriend's apartment at 4:55 a.m. This makes it look like Michael conducted a quick attack against Samantha and ran away from the scene. Michael had spent the early morning hours stealing and vandalizing, yet he decided to go home at that particular moment, right after Samantha was murdered. Almost like he knew he needed to get out of the area. Samantha's blood was found on a North Face jacket that Michael had been wearing on the night of the murder, as well as a gray backpack he was carrying. The amount of blood on the jacket was small, but the jacket had been washed since the murder. When the police responded to the call about Samantha being found outside her apartment, they noticed an SUV about 150 feet away. One of the tires of that vehicle had been stabbed, and it was still leaking air. This is the same vehicle Michael had been seen next to right before the murder. After the murder, Michael downloaded an app on his phone to monitor police activity in Detroit. On the day the police reported that Jeffrey was released from custody, Michael searched for Detroit same-day passport. He claimed that he needed the passport for a Halloween party, yet by this time it was November. When interviewed by the police, Michael supplied 4 versions of his activity on the night of the murder. First, he denied any criminal activity. Then he said he was only taking photographs of vehicles for other people to target. After this, he admitted that he had pulled a few vehicle door handles to see if they were unlocked. Finally, he admitted that he had broken into vehicles. Initially, the police did not mention to Michael that he was under investigation for a violent crime. Yet he kept insisting that he didn't do anything violent or hurt anyone. When Michael talked about discovering Samantha on the ground and touching her, he indicated that her body was cold. There was no way her body would have been cold given the timing. She would have just collapsed on the ground moments before Michael touched her. Moving to the exculpatory factors, Michael claimed that Samantha's blood ended up on his jacket and backpack because he touched her after she was dead. The witness who found the body touched Samantha to see if she was alive. It stands to reason that Michael would have done the same thing if he encountered her on the ground. When asked why he didn't contact the police, Michael said, quote, "I'm a black guy in the middle of the night breaking into cars, and I found myself standing in front of a dead white woman. This doesn't look good at all," unquote. Samantha's former boyfriend contacted the police and essentially implicated himself in the murder. One reason he was ruled out as a suspect was because his cell phone never left his home, but he could have left the cell phone in his home. When considering all the evidence in this case, do I think that Michael was guilty of murder? Yes, in my opinion, he was guilty of felony murder and home invasion. He was extremely fortunate to have the jury deadlock on those charges. The theory of the crime put forward by the defense is simply not believable. Under their timeline, Samantha was stabbed sometime around 1:30 a.m., but she did not die immediately. Instead, she unlocked her phone several times and watched Netflix. Almost 3 hours later, she collapsed, and Michael just happened to find her at that moment. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Michael was a career criminal who went out on the night of the murder intending to steal from motor vehicles. He was also in the mood to vandalize and look for trouble in general. Not long after he stabbed the tire on the SUV not far from Samantha's apartment, he noticed that her front door was open. He decided to enter her apartment to steal her belongings, but was startled to find Samantha on the couch. He quickly stabbed her 8 times and fled without ensuring that she was dead. As Samantha stumbled outside and collapsed, Michael ran home. Michael reasoned that the police would eventually find him, but he did get one lucky break. Samantha's former boyfriend, Jeffrey, implicated himself in her murder. After the police realized that Jeffrey was not involved, Michael once again became concerned. He monitored police activity and searched for a passport, but ultimately decided to take his chances by remaining in the area. When he was arrested, he tried to talk his way out of being prosecuted, but was unsuccessful. During his trial, Michael's defense managed to create a doubt by pointing out how the former boyfriend Jeffrey implicated himself and how the police conducted a haphazard investigation. The jury deadlocked even though the state did prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. I imagine that Jeffrey's quasi-confession was a sticking point for some of the jury members. The tendency for the state to overvalue confessions backfired in this case. The prosecutor had to argue how Jeffrey's confession meant nothing without corroborating evidence, but not all the members of the jury believed that assertion. In a strange way, mental health factors led to Michael escaping justice, not symptoms that he suffered, rather symptoms that Jeffrey suffered. Jeffrey inserted himself into the investigation and handed Michael a victory. Now moving to my final thoughts. Michael Jackson Bolanos believed himself to be a smooth criminal. From his perspective, stealing was as easy as ABC. Theft was a big chess game, but Michael was not effective as playing black or white. He admitted to being bad, but claimed he wasn't dangerous. Despite this, the police built a case against Michael for murder. Ultimately, in a thriller of a trial, Michael beat it. He claims that he doesn't know who committed the murder, but to find out, all he needs to do is look at the man in the mirror. Those are my thoughts in the case of Samantha Woll. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They consistently generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.